I couldn't believe how hypocritical some people could be until I met my cousin Lily. Every time she opened her mouth, it was a lecture about principles, how she'd never get involved with someone who's taken, how her Buddhist heart couldn't bear to do anything wicked or karmically disastrous. Yet, despite all her preaching, I couldn't stand her. People who go on about morals often live the opposite way, and Lily was no exception. My family's pretty well off, and her parents, Uncle Tim and Aunt May, were always dragging her over to our place, even though they lived a good 20 kilometers away, not 20 meters. Their excuse? Your family's so cultured. We're just simple folks. Let Lily stay with you, so she can learn from her cousins and maybe make something of herself. Yeah, right? They talked a big game about culture, but if they wanted that, they could have sent her to school or hired a tutor. Truth is, they couldn't handle her, and neither could anyone else. They just wanted to pawn her off on us, hoping she'd snag a rich husband through our connections. My parents, being the soft-hearted types, kept telling me to let her stay. But Lily? She didn't care about learning or self-improvement. Even back in middle school, she was obsessed with her looks, forget studying. While other kids were up early doing homework, she'd be primping, bragging about her natural beauty when her friends complimented her. "Oh, I don't even try," she'd say, basking in their envy. By high school, she'd gotten bolder. She'd flutter her lashes at boys like Jake, the class heartthrob, who already had a girlfriend. "Jake, grab me some breakfast, will ya? I didn't have time to eat." "You're the best. Thanks," she'd chirp, completely ignoring his relationship. At night, she'd call him up, asking him to buy her tampons because it's too scary out there. Once, she even convinced Jake to ditch his girlfriend on a ride home, shoving the poor girl off the bike with some excuse like, "Oh, your place is so far, Jake. Just take me instead." If I were that girlfriend, Lily wouldn't have a hair left on her head. She was shameless, flirting with Jake and every other guy in class, doting on the rich ones while keeping the average Joes as backups. She'd slurp beef-pho with her latest boyfriend, posting lovey-dovey pics online, then dump him a month later for someone new. Then came the glow-up phase. She wiped her social media clean of old posts and started uploading pics of herself looking pure and innocent. Turns out, she'd set her sights on a CEO type. Mr. Daniel, she called him. Aunt May rushed over to our house, gushing, "Our Lily's dating a real catch. He's loaded, educated, everything you don't need to waste time studying for. Marry rich, and you're set." Lily strutted around, bragging to me, "He spoils me rotten. Says he'll even give me my own company someday." I smelled the scam from a mile away. A businessman with empires from north to south, and my parents had never heard of him? My gut screamed fraud. Sure enough, the wedding day rolled around, and it was a disaster. The screen didn't flash cute couple pics. It showed Lily's history as a homewrecker. A woman named Mrs. Clara, the groom's real wife, grabbed the mic and announced, "Hi, everyone. I'm Clara, married to the man Lily stole. We built everything together, but he couldn't resist her charms. He'd bury his face in her river of youth and ditched me and our kids." Then came the twist. Mrs. Clara had orchestrated the whole thing. She'd hired a fake tycoon, Lily's groom, to trap her. Turns out, he was just Mrs. Clara's assistant. Lily thought she'd traded up from a real millionaire to a mistress gig, only to end up with nothing. Aunt May smashed a wine bottle in rage, and Uncle Tim tried to lunge at Mrs. Clara, but security held them back. The wedding turned into a street spectacle. No one stopped it. They just called the cops and left. Karma's a brutal teacher. That's not even the half of my family drama. Growing up, I had another thorn in my side. My niece, Sophie. See, my parents had my oldest brother, Mark, when they were 18. He kept the tradition alive, having Sophie at 18 too. My mom was still popping out kids when I came along. She was barely 40, and my sister-in-law was 21. So, Sophie and I ended up the same age, raised under one roof. You'd think being her uncle would earn me some respect, but nope. She called me Uncle Sam, like it was a joke, and treated me like her personal punching bag. We'd bicker constantly, especially over chores. We'd agreed I'd wash dishes in the morning. She'd do evenings. But she'd always weasel out with, "Uncle Sam, cover for me tonight. I'll do 2 tomorrow." Tomorrow never came. When I call her out, she'd stick out her tongue and taunt, I never promised that. After one too many broken deals, I made her sign a contract, white paper, black ink. Next time she tried her help me out routine, she whined to my mom, "Grandma, Uncle Sam's bullying me." I got chewed out for not being mature. But I got my revenge in high school. Sophie was in the literature track, I was in science. We hated each other's guts and never let on we were related. During finals, she aced her lit exam with a 9, but bombed everything else, totaling a measly 10 across 5 subjects. She got called into the principal's office, and, get this, she told the teacher her parents were on a business trip in Danville. Problem is, Danville's 2 kilometers from our house, where her parents actually worked. She begged me to pose as her guardian. Somehow, she'd snagged a photocopy of our family registry to prove it. I showed up, basketball in hand, and the teacher just laughed it off and let her slide. After that, I never had to wash dishes again. Blackmail's a beautiful thing. College was a different beast. Sophie was a slob at home, but a charmer outside. Guys fawned over her, and she'd parade around with them, using me as a shield. "This is my boyfriend," she'd say, pointing at me, just to dodge unwanted attention. It tanked my love life. Girls thought I was a two-timer. By senior year, I was still single, despite being decent-looking, athletic, and ambitious. Meanwhile, my buddy Tom, a shy, sweet guy, finally found love. His new girlfriend chased him first, saying, "I'll do the flirting. You just stand there." 2 years in, they hit a rough patch. Tom called me late one night, drunk and sobbing. She dumped me, man. Said I'm broke. No car, no future. She wanted designer stuff I couldn't afford. I told him, "Love's messy, but you'll figure out. Get rich and shove it in her face." And he did, sort of. Last I saw, he was rolling in a borrowed BMW, dating a sugar mama twice his age. I caught them locking lips in a mall. He'd gone from heartbroken to hustling. I wanted to pull him back, but he'd cut me off if I tried. Then there's my own love story. I'm Sarah, a 25-year-old lawyer in Houston. My parents named me hoping I'd be gentle and sweet, but I was a terror, skipping school, fighting bullies, a regular in the principal's office. Junior year, my grades tanked, and my parents hired a tutor, Kevin, a hotshot grad student. I hated studying, but he stuck with me. One day, I bombed a math test, 4.5 out of 10, and ditched class by climbing the school wall. Halfway over, I landed on something solid, Kevin. "That's dangerous, you know," he said, worried. I grinned, "I've got skills." He dragged me to a cafe, bought me a milkshake, and after I vented about the test, he promised, "I'll make sure no one talks down to you again." His confidence lit a fire in me. By year's end, I clawed my way into law school. We started dating in college, and 5 years later, he proposed with, "I fell for the girl who climbed walls with more guts than sense." We've been married 5 years now, and he still teases me about it. Happy ending? You bet. But not every story ends that way. Take my ex, Ryan. We met at a friend's party, reconnected at work, and hit it off. He was kind, attentive, at the office, anyway. Outside work, he barely made time for me, locking me out of his life after hours. A year in, I asked about marriage. He agreed, but when I visited his family 300 kilometers away, things unraveled. His relatives were cold, and I overheard neighbors gossiping. Ryan had 2 ex-wives, one still in the picture with kid. I found his old wedding photos stashed in a closet. Confronted, he admitted it, begging forgiveness. "We're done," I said and walked out. I didn't expose him online, just cut ties and moved on. He didn't deserve my energy. Finally, there's Mike, a 29-year-old rideshare driver. He's got a regular passenger, Emma, a single mom who works the streets to fund her daughter's heart surgery. Mike's seen her bruised and broken too many times. He's fallen for her, offering to help her start over. "I've saved up. We can make it work," he pleaded one night outside a motel. She refused, too ashamed of her past. Mike kept supporting her quietly, groceries, clothes for her kid, hoping she'd see her worth. One day, she called him crying, "I'm done with that life. Can you pick me up?" He did, and they're building something real now. Sometimes persistence pays off. As for me, I'm still figuring it out. 2 exes, Grace, a gorgeous mess who lived like a pig, and Anna, a sweet girl scared off by my family's expectations. left me single at 28. I'm ready to settle down, but maybe I'm the problem. Or maybe the right one's still out there. Either way, I'm not giving up yet.